Welcome to the Green Hour. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you check out our previous episodes of the Green Hour on our YouTube channel. That is FM91 on YouTube. And make sure that you've subscribed. Today on The Green Hour, we have an artist and curator whose work resurrects complex histories in the South Asian, Southwest Asian, and North African region. In the process, he unpacks the intersections of religion, storytelling, futurity, and ecology through a multimedia practice rooted in printmaking, textile, and performance. His current project, Bulhan Name, and we'll learn more about that in just a bit, seeks to understand the cultural, ecological, and social history of the Indus River through the eyes of one of Pakistan's most elusive animals, the Indus River dolphin. To tell us more about what he's doing right now, joining us, artist and wildlife activist Zulfikar Ali Bhutto joins us. Good morning and welcome to the Green Hour.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's a lot that you're doing.
I know, I was listening to it and I was like, maybe I need a new bio. This is really intense. This sounds intense. I was like, who is this person?
I need some downtime.
Yeah.
But this is, I mean, what sort of set you off on this path?
Well, so I guess there's the path would be the creative path. Maybe that's the question.
The creative path, and then sort of leading or transitioning into wildlife activism.
So it kind of went the other way around. So in 2004, I was actually I was a very active, keen eco nerd. And 2004, for context, I was about 14, 15. And now I'm 32, and I was volunteering for the World Wildlife Fund for Nature (WWF), as well as the Sindh Wildlife Department. And I had met at that time Mr. Hussain Bakhsh Bhagat, who was deputy director at the time of the Sindh Wildlife Department, and he took me on my first ever river dolphin safari in Sakkar, in the middle of the city of Sakkar. And I didn't think I would see one. I didn't expect to see one. I had grown up as a Sindhi in Sindh alongside the river my whole life. Never had I seen one. And suddenly, within 10 minutes, we saw one, then two, then three, then four, then five, and it was really magical. And then this same person, Mr. Bhagat, had invited me in 2006 on a dolphin rescue. And so the dolphins get trapped in our massive canal irrigation system in Pakistan that feeds our millions of acres of crops. But the dolphins sort of swim into these canals as a way, well, one, because they're curious and they like to explore. Two, they're following fish. Three, they're great places to meet other dolphins, set up a life together, maybe have kids. So, but then when the canals dry, which they do every winter, they get trapped. And even though they breathe air like us, they risk dying of exposure. They don't have melanin in their skins. They can't absorb the sun. So there are rescue missions where they take them physically out of the canal and put them back in the river. So I was part of one of those rescue missions, and I sat within inches of a young male dolphin about 4 feet long. And I remember distinctly, I had to pad it with water so it didn't dehydrate. And I remember distinctly thinking, wow, what an amazing creature. What an amazing animal. And I could feel its tension. I could feel its anxiety. I could feel that it was struggling to understand what was happening. And we have to remember they're blind. They're effectively blind. They can only see light and dark. They can't see shapes very well. So, you have to take into account that this dolphin is completely it has no idea what's gonna go down in the next 20 minutes. So, and then alhamdulillah, we released it back into the river, and then it did one leap into the air, and we all clapped, and it was a really very emotional. Very emotional. So it's funny. It started there. Actually, it started in the ecology. But of course, I've always, for me, art is a way of breathing. Also, art is how I understand the world. Art is how I put what's in my mind into a more tangible form. So it was kind of a flip, when I was going to university, like, do I do art or do I do environment? And I actually started with a degree in geography. in Earth's surface systems. And there was one particular course where there was all this sort of math, and I had to calculate how wind affected.
No thanks.
No thanks. I was like, no, this is too much. So I ended up switching to history of art, then doing a master's in fine art, and then I was living abroad for a while, and then I came back to Pakistan in 2020, and the first thing I did was go back to see the dolphins. And
prior to 2020, was the wildlife activism still a part of your initial, or was it was more, you think it was preparatory? It was just preparation for what was to come?
Well, I mean, the US, I think I lived in two different places. 2010 I went to the UK, then 2014 I went to the US for 2014 was my master's, and that's when I was doing art as a practical thing. And I had come from Pakistan, and I've always cared for marginal identities, and I do consider ecology a marginal identity in this country. It's pushed to the side in favor of whatever the center topic is, be that a human topic or a non-human topic. And so at the time I was actually working a lot with the Hindu community in Sindh. And I brought that project to the US when I was doing my master's, and it was greeted in a very, obviously they didn't know, they didn't understand, they didn't get it. And I was being encouraged to sort of focus on things that were happening in the US. And I'm sorry, but I didn't care. I just didn't care. I was like, well, your nation, your country's really messed up. That, you want me to make art about that? From my perspective. So I ended up actually not doing ecology work or anything like that. And instead, I reflected more so on Pakistani aesthetics, Sufi aesthetics, shrine aesthetics, even shadi aesthetics, this sort of chamki, bling aesthetic. And I... sort of my imagination kind of took over, and the project I was most doing there in my last few years was called Tomorrow We Inherit the Earth, and it was this sort of imaginary revolution. It was creating an archive of a revolution that happens in the future when the Earth has gone into a place where humans have morphed into these half animal, half human creatures, and we're fighting a revolution. We're still fighting a revolution, and it very much reflects, and today is actually Yom Ali, it reflects off of this idea of Kul Arde Karbala Kul Yomi Ashura, right? So the series was based on this idea that the revolution is happening in the future. The Zalim, the Yazid is still in the future. The Muslim are still in the future, So what does an all-inclusive revolution look like?
I love that, and that's a whole entire conversation right there.
Yes,
we'll get into that, and also your work, Bulhan Name. We'll come to that in just a bit. We're going to head to a break. Be back with more on the Green Hour with artist and wildlife activist Zulfikar Ali Bhutto joining us this morning. Just before the break, you touched on a revolution of which you are a part of. And we like to think here at FM91 through the Green Hour, we're a part of too. There's revolution on many fronts, and the revolution that we're kind of talking about is the ecological / environmental revolution, but you don't see it separate to other revolutions. How do you place this revolution in the current sort of place that we're at in the world?
Well, I like to start with this idea of dignity. Ghairat, right? We all living things are worthy of dignity, and that is undebatable. And I think when we look at the injustice that's happening in our country, or even if we look at the inequality, maybe we don't want to call it injustice, but let's say we look at the inequality in our country, we cannot separate human rights from ecological rights, from animal rights, from water rights, from forest rights, from indigenous people's rights. They are all connected. because we are a part of this earth, we are a part of the land, we are a part of the ecology, and then it extends to a global front. Pakistan is sure an independent country, but it's an independent country that's connected to many others. We're all part of one earth. And ultimately what we're seeing is when we don't take care of our environment, we have issues such as water scarcity that bewilder us. We're not sure how to solve that. We have extreme weather events that displace people. We have air pollution that's choking us. There are children now being born with black lungs. So how can you say that ecology is not part of the struggle for human rights and human dignity? That's how I see it.
No, and I concur. I agree. I mean, it's, and you said something a little earlier on that it's not separate. It's a united.
It's a united revolution,
right? It's not us or them, or it's not me and you.
No.
It's just us.
It's us. It's us. Yes,
right.
Of course. We're all struggling for dignity. We're all struggling for respect within the confines of systems that are already very limited. So we're all struggling to find our place within that. We're all struggling to find respect within that. We're all struggling to find ourselves within this system. And if we look at the state of Sindh, ultimately it goes back to the river. Ultimately it goes back to the fact that we have been deprived of our water rights. There are hundreds of indigenous communities that depended on the river that have gone extinct.
Yeah.
So it's not just animal extinction, it's also a human extinction, it's a lifestyle extinction, it's a way of life extinction, yes.
Now, tell us about Bulhan Name, and what does that mean, and what is that work for you?
So Bulhan is the Sindhi Saraiki word for the Indus River dolphin. Nama or Name meaning diary, and it's this project that I started pretty much as soon as I landed back into Pakistan after being abroad, and I had a diary with me. And as we were traveling along the highway, and because I hadn't been back home in a while, everything felt new and giddy to me. So I was recording everything. I was writing down the stop signs. I was writing down the different visual motifs on the buses and the trucks. I was writing down the landscape. I was writing down the animals. And then I got to Sakhar, and I went into the river, and I was writing about seeing the dolphins and experiencing the dolphins. And it became a daily fieldwork journal. And the idea behind it was, like you said in the introduction, is there's this whole world that's sprung up around the dolphins. You know, the dolphins are a very ancient species. They're kind of like dinosaurs in a sense. They're older than marine dolphins, our river dolphins. They're about a 30 million-year-old species,
really?
Which is why they look a little bit like dinosaurs. You know, they don't have eyes, they don't have retinas, they don't have corneas. They have these big snouts, big teeth. So they've been witness to a world that's been changing and shifting and springing around them, and a very tiny portion of that time has been us. But we have had the most significant impact. So the idea was to essentially see through the eyes of a blind dolphin the human structures that have been made around it, specifically in Sakhar. So Sakhar is very interesting. You know, there's a bunch of islands. They all have temples, shrines, Hindu, Muslim. There's also human-constructed bridges. The British made a bridge. Then Ayub Khan made a bridge. Then you have the British-built Sakhar Barrage. So there are these sort of colonial, post-colonial, religious, spiritual monuments within only 10 kilometers. There are 7 sites that are very, very, very interesting. So I took photos of these 7 sites using the most basic elemental camera, which is called a pinhole camera. It's the first ever camera that was ever invented. It's literally a box, and then in the box there's a hole the size of a pin. And then I put film, old school film, 4x5 film inside. And I take photos of these different monuments. And the idea is that the dolphin the dolphin's eyes are also pinholes. You know, we have corneas, we have retinas, so we function like DSLRs. We can focus on light, we can unfocus on light, we can adjust to different things, but they can't. They see one perspective. They see one world through these pinhole eyes. So the idea was to mimic that way of seeing. But it just keeps expanding, because once you're in a river, you're connected to everything else. You're connected to every other water that pours into the river. You're connected to the mountains, and you're connected to the sea. And so the project has really taken me to some really, really magical places and through some really, really magical experiences.
Can you share some of those experiences?
Yeah, I think one, you know, this is something that I think I can't shut up about. But I went, I was kind of invited, but I also sort of put myself in. I'm here. I went with WWF and a bunch of other organizations on the Indus River Dolphin Survey, which is where you literally manually count how many dolphins you see in the river. And we went from Jinnah Barrage, and the idea was we would complete till Kotri Barrage. But the security situation in southern Punjab and northern Sindh isn't so good, so we weren't able to complete the survey. But because you're counting dolphins get scared of motors. So we had to do we did 600 kilometers of the river without a motor. We lived on islands in the middle of the river. We ate from the river, we brushed our teeth in the river, we washed our dishes in the river, we set up camp, we closed camp, and we were on boats for 12 hours a day. And it's really fascinating. I don't know, a lot of people, you know, the Indus River, especially in Punjab and in the Saraiki belt, is an overwhelming sight. It's in its widest point, it's 35 kilometers long, including islands that have beaches, that have grassland, that have forests, that have villages on them, that have different communities. And you're just lost in an archipelago. It doesn't feel like a river, it feels like you're in an archipelago, like you're in an ocean. And Sindhu means ocean as well. It means Lion River is technically the exact translation from Sanskrit, but also through time it has become a stand-in for ocean. So really the river of our ancestors was not this trickle that we have today. It was truly an overwhelming sight that dominated everyday life, and you only realize that when you spend that long on the river. And it's a world in and of itself. It has its own language. Saraiki is the language of the river. Hindko is the language of the river. Sindhi is the language of the river. You go 10, 20 kilometers either side, it changes. Hindko changes to Pashto or Punjabi. Saraiki changes to Punjabi. Sindhi changes to Balochi or to Parkari. So it's really its own world.
Amazing.
And we really have to, I think every Pakistani should absorb that fact.
I am, and as you're saying it's such a huge chunk that we miss out on, because just hearing you say it is giving me a different perspective, let alone being there in it. Would have been life-changing.
It really was. And not only that, it was also the people on the survey. It wasn't just the experience of the landscape. That was its own thing. To sleep at night to jackals and hyenas serenading you to sleep, which was really something. Every night, just howls into the moon. But also the people that were there. You know, there were people from all the different departments, all the different government, private departments, the fisher folk, our guides. I mean, really, we were all united in one purpose.
We are doing the Green Hour this morning with Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, artist and wildlife activist. We're going to be back straight after this. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to FM91 on YouTube. Good morning. This is the Green Hour on FM91. Joining us today, artist and wildlife activist Zulfikar Ali Bhutto joining us. What are your thoughts, observations, comments on wildlife protection in Sindh, climate change adaptation, water conservation?
You know, it's a complicated thing. There's good and bad things happening. I have to say the current head of the wildlife department is a really, really kind and excellent man named Javed Meher, and he has really, really tried very hard in his position to radically change our understanding of ecology and wildlife in Sindh. He pushed forward a bill that declared the river Indus dolphin the queen of the Indus. He is in court fighting against the sort of the limestone mafia. So I don't know if you know, but in Pakistan there's this huge industry of quarrying for limestone, which is used in cement. And almost all of Sindh's mountains and hills, because Sindh has several small mountain ranges that are very historically significant, and one particularly is Auror, which is next to Sakkar, and that's where the Indus used to flow. Achha. And that's a 7,000-year-old civilization. The capital of Sindh was there when Alexander the Great conquered. The capital of Sindh was there when Muhammad bin Qasim conquered. And it's almost 60% gone because it's all limestone hills. So he's fighting against these mafias that are just sort of taking as much of this sort of historical, archaeologically relevant land. You know, if you want to look at it from a particularly utilitarian purpose, well, there is excavation that could happen here, but it's all sort of being smashed to bits and commercialized. And he's also fighting against the logging industry, the timber industry. I mean, he's really doing a lot, and there are many other people. Such as Nazir Mirani Sai, who has been a dolphin savior, as well. His father was also a dolphin savior, but he's been a dolphin savior for 45 years since he was a little kid, and he's a fisher folk. You know, he spent his childhood exclusively on a boat in the river. And then Abdul Jabbar Larik Sai, who's also from a family of fisher folk, he also has devoted his life to the Indus River dolphin. And these are all people I met in 2004. Then there's Dr. Uzma Khan, who is a biologist who's really been devoting everything. Hamera Aisha, Dr. Makhdoom. There's so many names I could name, and I want to name them, of people who have really been putting so much effort into conservation. Now, unfortunately, there's also a flip side. There's a dark side where there are commercial interests. Now, and one of the biggest is the real estate mafia. And that is something that has been in the way of any conservation effort. So if we look just around Karachi, let's just take Karachi as an example, where we are right now, and we go half an hour up, right, or an hour, let's say, or actually from here maybe just 45 minutes, and you enter Bahria and DHA. So where Bahria and DHA city are is essentially the aquifers, or where the waterways of the Malir River start. The Malir River essentially birthed Karachi. It's Karachi's green belt. It's Karachi's lungs. You know, for as long as this place has existed and longer, it's been where all the farms are, vegetables, mangoes. I mean, I just went there yesterday. You have no idea how many fruiting trees there are. It's really quite magical. And what Bahria and DHA are doing is that they're cutting the mountaintops to build plots. So when you cut the mountaintops, you essentially stop water from gathering and flowing into these rivers. So if we're entering a water crisis, right, we have to use as many local resources as possible. Right now, the majority of Karachi's water comes from the Indus River, and a small amount comes from a hub dam. But we have the Malir River. We have a freshwater source that is replenished regularly, that's being systematically destroyed. And in a city of 16 million people that's so far away from a large water reserve, I mean, this is precious. So we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot here. And I don't want to put anyone into any trouble, but unfortunately these real estate people, to be polite, are incredibly powerful. So no politician, no minister will want to say anything against them. And this is where the disaster is. That yes, we can do symbolic things like call the Indus River dolphin our queen. We can do symbolic things like file a court case against a company. But the real issues are being shied away from.
And then you have that expressway that's being made.
The Malir Expressway. I mean, the Malir Expressway is set to essentially destroy the Malir River, just like the Liari Expressway was the death knell on the Liari River. You know, we don't even know that Karachi has rivers. Karachi has rivers. Karachi is, in fact, a drainage basin. That's why it floods all the time. We're always like, why does it flood all the time? Because it's not meant to be built on. You know, the Liari River drains drains into the Karachi harbor. The Malir River drains into what is now Phase 6 and Phase 8. There are reasons for these things. It's not just an infrastructural problem. It's not just that the nalas are not properly built. It's not only that. It's a larger issue of, are we building where we're supposed to, and should we think more practically about how and where we build?
So why aren't we thinking practically? And so how do we? Because it feels like there are a lot of people that are doing what they can, and the names that you mentioned, but it's uphill.
It is uphill. Well,
what do we do?
That's a huge question. The thing is, we know what we do, right? There's practical solutions. We stop building in Kathor, which is the area north of Karachi. That's the border between Malir and Kirthar National Park. We don't build in national parks. We don't build where rivers start. We don't block aquifers.
Is it also true that they were going to build something in Kirthar?
Yeah, they're extending Bahriya into Kirthar. They've already done it. And they will deny that. They'll deny that now. They never cared before to deny it. Bahriya has systematically changed laws to build. Our constitution exists. It isn't just a piece of paper, like Musharraf said, to be thrown away. It exists to protect the rights of our people, to protect the marginalized, not the powerful. And they have systematically changed laws in the constitution to be able to build where they are building now, to be able to displace people. They have trapped villages inside of Bahriya that have no electricity. They've literally put fences around them, and they give you a 40,000 rupee fine if your bakras go outside into Bahriya. How dare your goat enter my villa? What is this? This is not a dignified way for anyone to live. These are practical things. Now, if you go to any conference that's about ecology in Sindh, and there are many issues, so I'm not going to name them.
Right.
The first speaker who comes up, let's say there's 5 speakers on a panel, the first speaker who comes up will render the other 4-0. Why? Because they will say everything that needs to be done to fix the problem. And everyone else is going to say the same thing. We know what it is. It's almost boring now. We know exactly what needs to be done. We know exactly who is doing what. But the problem is, people are so invested. People have put their savings. People have spent billions and billions of dollars in these real estate businesses, in these quarrying businesses, in these cement businesses. Coming from a country that is facing an economic crisis, we have to make choices.
Right.
And we're not making the right choices.
But still then, so it's something that we've said this often on the Green Hour, that there's laws and there's out there, it's all there, but it's not being implemented, it's not being executed. So where does one even start? What is the start point? Because it doesn't feel like there is a start.
Well, in this, I understand that in this situation, given what's happening, it feels frustrating. If we're going to talk about water rights in Pakistan, we need to start with the Indus Water Treaty that was signed in 1960 between Pakistan and India. And in that Indus Water Treaty, we handed over the rights of 3 of our eastern rivers, Ravi, Satluj, and Beas, to India exclusively. And this needs to be revisited, because if we want to actually make sure that we have a functioning river system, that we're not buckling at the knees to freak climate disasters, we have to make sure that the Indus reaches the sea. A lot of people say, okay, we need to hoard water in Punjab. It doesn't matter. Hoard as much water as you want in Punjab or in KPK. Our very climate cycles have been affected. We're not getting as much rain as we used to. And when we do, it happens every, I don't know how many years in these freak incidences. So it's not just, so our dam capacity is lowering. The water has to reach the sea to fix the whole climate cycle. Clouds originate in the sea. They follow the river upstream. they rain in the mountains, they come back down to the sea, and the system starts. So if you're going to block the Indus from going to the sea, the cloud system's confused. It's going to rain all over Karachi, it's going to rain all over all these other places and not go to the north and not do this sort of gradual incline that it's supposed to. So I think it's a
start point.
That's a start point. I think revisiting the Indus Water Treaty, I think, would be a really great start point. But that's also a big thing. That's also a very, very big thing. And it's also an investment issue too.
We're speaking to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto this morning. We do have to head to break. If you have any questions, by the way, 0315119191. This is the Green Hour. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto joins us today, artist and wildlife activist. So since you've been back, I know you've been busy and you're also documenting and you got your work that sort of overcome you. What is it that you're working on right now? Or your focus right now?
I'm really, really, really desperately trying to get a foundation off the ground.
Okay.
I think, art is amazing.
Yes.
I love art. I think it's great. As I said previously, it's how I breathe. It's how I exist. But it is not enough. It's not enough. I recognize that. I recognize this limitation. I also don't think an NGO can change a country either. The law is the law. Policies are policy. A private organization has no business changing laws. But we can work within these frameworks. So one thing I'm particularly interested in is it was recently made illegal to kill an Indus River dolphin, which is great. In fact, it's always been illegal, but they've recently given it jail time instead of just a fine.
Okay.
And one fisherman in Panoakil was given 5 years jail time for killing an Indus River dolphin. I don't believe in punishment like that. If we want to preserve dignity, living dignity, human and non-human dignity, we can't go arresting fishermen for killing dolphins that they're not aware of. If we know a dolphin is a mammal, we know it's more like us than it is a fish. It breathes air, it gives birth to children, it feeds them milk, all of those kinds of things. But a fisherman, how will they understand the distinction between a dolphin and the Foji kaga, or the largest catfish in the River Indus, which grows to 10 feet, and Indus River dolphin grows to a maximum of 8 feet? So how do you educate people about why don't we kill certain animals, or why do we eat certain animals versus not others? What does it mean to preserve a species? What does it mean to be empathetic and sympathetic to animals? We as a society need to grow in these directions. What are the laws in place? What kind of punishment can you get for killing a dolphin or an otter versus a catfish? So people, you can't just put laws and expect and punish people and expect that we're going to all be fine at the end of the day. And I think this is one of the problems here is that people in Pakistan are not granted security. So we make our own security.
Right.
But we need to start thinking in ways that I think are kinder, more empathetic.
So this foundation that you're looking to set up, then it's not an NGO. So this.
It would be like a private. Oh gosh, I shouldn't say too much yet, so that no nazar goes on it. But there is a category.
The mission of this foundation. There.
The mission of this foundation is to preserve the dignity of all living beings in Pakistan. That human dignity is not separate from animal dignity. That indigenous rights are not separate from anyone else's rights. So, but at the moment, right now, I'm doing my work, I'm doing my art, I'm doing my Bulhan Name project. You can see my hands are dirty from doing art this morning. I'm addicted. I'm also working with folks in Kathor, which is the region that's being affected both by DHA and Bahriya. And I was just with Hafiz Baloch Sai yesterday. I mean, they're really fighting the good fight. And we forget it's not just people like me who are raising awareness. It's people like them who are also raising awareness, but they don't have access as much as we do. So I've really been trying my best to bring not only them, but also people who have been doing dolphin rescues and work in that sense into the mainstream. Because yes, I'm aware that my voice creates impact, but it's not the only one there.
So make sure you tell us when this foundation is up and running.
Inshallah.
If
Inshallah.
we're not
Pray.
divulging much.
Pray. Everyone, please pray.
and wishing you all the success too with it.
Inshallah. Thank you.
So what we thought we'd do is we'd end on a light note. Something we like to play called 91 Seconds. So it's our sort of version of the rapid fire. So
I'm excited.
I was looking forward to this one.
I was really looking forward to this. Go ahead,
All right,
fire.
all right, so let me get this stopwatch out. Here we go. Wait, let's reset this. Okay. The last song you were humming.
No, it's so embarrassing. I do.
No way. All
I
right.
was trying to find it. I was like, I heard this when I was 14. Anyway, keep going.
What would you be if you weren't an activist, an artist?
My God, I guess just as a zamindar, living life just that.
On
I
the
mean,
farm.
I'm also a zamindar. I do enjoy the farm, but I guess that would be my calling.
When was the last time you cried?
Ooh, 2 months ago.
Okay. Unusual hobby?
Unusual hobby, cooking. Is that unusual? That's not unusual.
Not really.
Not
It
really.
depends what are you cooking.
With
though.
rapid fire. I don't know.
All right. So, last person you texted or WhatsApped?
That would be my sister.
No.
Yes.
And the thing that irritates you the most gets under your skin.
Ooh, wasting paper. For some reason, I hate wasting paper. I think it's the worst thing you can do.
Put this paper aside.
Yeah, I mean, I will hoard paper for no reason at all, just to be like, oh, let me write a note on this later. Yeah, hoarding paper.
You mentioned
Yeah.
cooking. The best dish, your sort of signature dish.
My hummus is amazing.
No, wait.
My baba ganoush is amazing. My hara batata. I do Lebanese mezze. That would be the Lebanese mezze is my best. Salan is hit or miss with me. I can do a good good rajma masala if I have the right sirka. But if it's the synthetic sirka, it's just going to be bad.
You talk like a pro.
Thank you.
There's your calling. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto joins us on the Green Hour. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we can't wait to hear more of what you're doing because there is stuff happening behind the scenes.
Yes.
Hush hush, but we can't wait to hear more about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And follow Zulfikar Ali Bhutto on Instagram. Where are you at?
Instagram, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Zulfikar with a K. That's how I spell my name. And then Twitter, Bhutto Zulfikar Ali.
Got it. Thank you so much for joining us on the Green Hour. Gonna leave you with some Pharrell Williams and Travis Scott. We'll catch you tomorrow then. May your news be good news.